Before history was ever written, before the first city rose from sun-baked brick, and long before the first word was ever carved into stone, whispers speak of a place far more ancient than anything humanity has ever dared to imagine. This isn't just another myth or a forgotten legend. This is the story of a hidden library, buried deep beneath the bones of forgotten worlds, sealed away by a civilization so old that time itself feels young in comparison. Tonight, we're not just exploring scattered tales. We are delving into the remnants of an excavation that was never meant to see the light of day. An expedition that uncovered evidence of knowledge older than writing, older than civilization, older, perhaps, than humanity itself. Our story begins after a violent tremor shook a remote unnamed plateau, somewhere in the vast arid lands between the modern borders of Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. A deep fissure split the earth, and from its depths, something strange emerged. A resonance, a hollow, humming echo, almost like a deep, rhythmic breath, trapped miles underground. Local shepherds, whose families had roamed these lands for generations, claimed the ground now sang when they walked on it. They avoided the area, believing it to be cursed. But where they saw a curse, others saw a mystery. A small, privately funded team of researchers, operating off the grid, was dispatched to investigate. When they arrived and descended into the fissure, they were met with something impossible. It wasn't a natural cave. It was a descending passageway, carved with a precision that defied all known history. The lines were too perfect for primitive stone tools. The surfaces smoothed as if melted by intense heat, and the geometric angles were too advanced for any known ancient culture. It was like stepping into a structure built by a lost science. And then, after navigating the descent, sealed in total darkness for untold thousands of years, they found it. A chamber. A vast circular room lined with towering shelves that stretched up into the suffocating blackness. But these shelves held no scrolls, no papyrus, no clay tablets. Instead, they were filled with thin slabs of a black, glass-like stone. They were smooth, unnaturally cold to the touch, and etched with lines so microscopic that even modern field instruments struggled to properly resolve them. The team dubbed them the lithic codices, stone books from an age that shouldn't have known how to carve with such impossible accuracy. When they shone their lights on the slabs, the carvings seemed to shimmer and shift as if they were layered, storing far more information than a simple two-dimensional carving ever could. It was data storage, but in a form no one had ever conceived. As they pushed deeper into the structure, the architecture grew even stranger. Walls curved into spirals that seemed to fold space into itself. In one smaller chamber, a monolithic pillar stood at the center, vibrating almost imperceptibly. When a researcher dared to touch it, the pillar produced tones at frequencies too low for the human ear to register, but powerful enough to shake dust from the high ceilings. One of the geophysicists on the team proposed a radical theory. The pillar wasn't just a structural support. It was a data storage device, one that used resonance instead of ink, encoding information in pure sound rather than symbols. A library you had to listen to. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. The walls of the main hall were adorned with murals, not the familiar hunting scenes or primitive gods of early man. These murals depicted towering, elongated humanoid figures with impossibly long limbs and large oval eyes. They were shown working alongside smaller, more human-like beings, as though teaching them, guiding them, or perhaps, commanding them. These figures matched no known myth, no established culture, and yet, startlingly similar forms have been found scattered across the globe. We see echoes of them at Göbekli Tepe in the Indus Valley, on the remote monoliths of Easter Island, and even in the megalithic structures of South America. But here, in this buried library, they weren't carved as abstract legends or gods. They were depicted as rulers, as architects, as survivors. At the far end of the main hall stood a massive circular stone disc, covering an entire wall. It was covered in a complex pattern of interlocking rings. There were no visible hinges, no cracks, no seams. It was a perfect, solid surface. Yet, The entire wall seemed to pulse with a faint energy whenever sound echoed through the chamber. After days of failed attempts to push, pry, or scan it, a researcher, frustrated, accidentally struck the central monolith with a tool, creating a clear resonant tone. The rings on the massive disc shifted. A moment of stunned silence, and then they tried again. Another tone, another frequency, another shift. This wasn't a mechanical lock. It was an acoustic one, a sophisticated combination lock designed to respond only to specific harmonic frequencies. After hours of trial and error, a sequence of tones caused the rings to align. With a sound like grinding glaciers, the massive stone door receded into the wall. A warm rhythmic hum washed over them, as though something ancient had just awakened from a millennial-long slumber. The room inside was untouched by time, and in its center, floating a few centimeters above the floor, defying gravity, was a perfect cube of dark, humming stone. Its surface wasn't solid. It writhed with liquid-like symbols that moved and rearranged themselves without any apparent light source. As though they were alive, it was a self-writing book, a living archive. The team called it the core codex. Surrounding this impossible artifact were more murals, but these told a much darker story. They depicted a civilization brought to its knees by a global cataclysm, mountains crumbling into dust, oceans swallowing entire continents, and fire raining from the sky. The murals showed the tall beings, the architects, descending into these underground sanctuaries, carrying the lithic codices with them. In one scene, they appeared to be handing fragments of their knowledge: agriculture, astronomy, architecture, to primitive, surviving humans. In another, they were sealing the great stone doors from the inside, leaving behind warnings carved in those spiraling, complex glyphs. But the final mural was the most unsettling of all. It depicted the return. The tall beings, emerging from beneath the earth, but changed. Their eyes were no longer benevolent. They were shown glowing like cold fire. A prophecy of a future event, or a record of a past one. No one knew. As the team frantically tried to document the chamber, every single piece of their electronic equipment suddenly and simultaneously died. Cameras, lights, communication gear, sensors, all of it went dark. The only light remaining was the ethereal glow of the floating cube, its liquid surface now shifting faster and faster. The chaotic symbols aligning into a single, terrifying shape. Then, the floor began to shake violently. Dust rained from above, and as they looked back into the main chamber, they saw the lithic codices, the stone books on the shelves, go dark one by one, like stars winking out in the night sky. The structure wasn't collapsing because of age or structural failure. It felt like it was shutting itself down. Or perhaps, waking something else up. The team fled in terror, scrambling back up the passageway as the world crumbled around them. Minutes after the last person emerged, the entire plateau caved in, swallowing the entrance and sealing the library forever. In the aftermath, there was silence. No government agency claimed the site. No official report was ever published. The very coordinates of the expedition were wiped from all unofficial maps, as if the ground had never cracked open at all. Whatever that library was, whatever knowledge it held, it was hidden once by its creators, and it has been hidden again by those who found it. So we are left with the questions. What kind of civilization builds a library that responds to sound, to touch, to pure resonance? What kind of beings carve symbols that move across stone like living liquid? And what kind of knowledge is so dangerous, so world-altering, that it must be buried twice, once by the ancients, and once by modern hands? If that library truly holds the memory of a civilization that predates our own, then we have to consider a final, terrifying possibility. Maybe it wasn't buried to protect its secrets from us. Maybe it was buried to protect us from what those secrets would awaken. Thanks for watching.